You unlock this door with the key of imagination. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of sound. A dimension of sight. A dimension of mind. You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You've just crossed over into the twilight zone.
So thank you, everybody. It's so great to be back. I was here last year and had so much fun, so I said, well, let's come on back and let's have some more fun. So, how many out there will be truthful and say that they remember the series, the Twilight Zone?
Oh, yeah.
Love it. All right. Well, it's been around for a while, and it's made it out into reruns and all that good stuff. But the concept was created by Rod Serling in 1959, and each episode focused around fantasy, science fiction, suspense, psychological thriller. Yeah, see? It wants to make its way back in. And it always would end with an unexpected twist that kind of had a little moral behind it. So, what does the Twilight Zone really mean? So, the dictionary says it's a state of mind. There is a Twilight Zone, believe me.
We're in it.
We are.
Yeah, we are.
So, what is the Twilight Zone? And it's a place where it's like a dreamlike state. It's hallucinatory. It's maybe it's an out-of-body experience. So haven't we all been in that place that felt like the Twilight Zone?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So, what does it feel to be in the Twilight Zone? Well, it's different for everybody, but it's kind of like you're watching your own movie and you're looking at it and you're like, is this really happening? Is this my life? And you don't know why things are happening. And you feel like, well, how can I stop this movie? How can I change this movie? And sometimes we don't know how. We're going to talk about how to change that movie when it happens. And we all know what that feels like, right? Been there, done that, got the t-shirts, and we don't want to go back. No, okay. No, definitely not. So we're all in the right place because we're going to figure out how. All right. So how does the science of mind philosophy and principles guide us away from the Twilight Zone? So we're going to talk about that and explore living in a different place, the Twilight Zone. So what is it like to be in the Twilight Zone? And more importantly, what does Twilight really mean other than something I made up for today's talk? No, there is a meaning behind that, I promise you. So, the concept of three, or tri, has been around for ages. It's been a significant part of our history. So, we all remember growing up the Three Little Pigs, right? One of my favorites, though everybody has some mixed reviews about it, is the Three Stooges. Everybody remembers those, right? Isn't that cool? I loved it. I grew up on that. It's very funny. We all know the meaning of three sheets to the wind. Okay.
Oh yeah.
And maybe some of us have been there. And Christopher Columbus made his journey with the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. So these are all concepts of three that have had a significance in our life. In Christianity, three is the number of the Holy Trinity of the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost.
And the three men I admire most, the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, they caught the last train for the coast the day the music died.
All right. So Another oldie but goodie, a blast from the past from Don McLean. He understood the three and the concept of three, and that was a great song. So, metaphysically speaking, we know about the mind, body, and spirit. Again, the three. And all walks of life know the three aspects of the mental, physical, and spiritual parts of our life. So you can see in so many different places in history and what's happening now, the concept of three is significant. So the importance of the number three and its parts. So what about the three-legged stool, right? So what happens when one leg is missing? The rest of the stool collapses. So not only is there a concept of three, we understand that each one of the three is important to the whole. That if one is missing, the rest of it falls apart. So we need all three of them kind of happening in concert. So the science of mind has its own version of the threes. Omniscient, which is knowing everything. Omnipotent, which is having unlimited power. And omnipresent, present everywhere at the same time. So that's the concept of three that we know our principles and philosophies stand for. So is the Twilight Zone a better way to understand that we know everything, we have unlimited power, and it's present all the time? So let's see what the science of mind has to say a little bit more about that. So our principles tell us about the concept of being perfect, whole, and complete. Again, the science of mind knows about the concept of three. And it knows that it's the highest consciousness that each of us possess. It doesn't get any more powerful than that, right? And we also know what our principles and philosophy say about the light. That it's the only place when present, it illuminates darkness. That's what light means. That when there is darkness, there's no light. But all we need to do is to shine light. We know that there can be no darkness. So when we talk about being perfect, whole, and complete, that's the three-legged stool of the highest consciousness that we can be. So would being in that illuminated place of perfect, whole, and complete put us in the Twilight Zone? Well, let's explore shifting from being in the Twilight Zone to the Twilight Zone. So Ernest Holmes said, the perfection of wholeness is the consciousness of healing. The perfection of wholeness is the consciousness of healing. So it knows that in order for us to have that understanding that we are already healed, we have to know about how perfect, whole, and complete that we are. And the metaphysical definition of perfection, what I believe it would say, is we already live in a perfect universe, but it needs to be seen mentally before it can become part of our universe. So we know that because we can say that we live in a perfect universe, but in order for us to experience that, we have to know it in our mind, and we have to see it mentally. And when we can see it first mentally, we know that we invite it into our experience. So the science of mind defines perfection as, quote, a state of consciousness completely free from any shadow of negation. A state of consciousness completely free from any shadow of negation. So here again, we have an inference of light, because if there is a shadow, there can't be light. And when you're free of the shadow, that is when you have perfection, that state of consciousness. And when you erase any thoughts of negation and you take the shadow out by introducing the light of your own perfection, that becomes your consciousness. So here's another way to look at perfection. We attain divine perfection through spiritual aspiration by never ceasing to erase false thoughts and by affirming truth as the law of our being. Now that's a lot packed into that one statement. But it says we attain perfection through our aspiration, by our aspiring to be the best that we can. So we're already perfect by aspiring. There is no mountain to get to. We're already there, and we're there because we aspire to be perfect. And how do we do that? By never stopping to erase whatever false thoughts we have. That doesn't mean that we're not going to have false thoughts or thoughts that are untrue. We have them all the time. What do we do with them? But by having a consciousness that when they come in, we're going to erase them. Well, how do we erase them? Well, we do that by affirming truth as the law of our being. So we replace the truth of who we are with anything else that's any different. And when you can do that, then that's the aspiration of living in spiritual perfection. So when we talk about perfection, what we're really saying is being in a state that is free of lack and without limitation. Now, we know we're perfect by looking at all the things we already have in our life. I mean, look at this beautiful center, and look at all the people that come here, and look at all the talent that comes from everyone in this center, and the consciousness that flows out of that. You know, we can live our life by just staying in that state of gratitude. And when we can be in that place of gratitude, recognizing everything that we already have in our life, that's how we move away from any lack of limitation. Those thoughts can't exist at the same time. When we're in gratitude, there can't be lack. And the reverse is also true as well. So this is what the first tri-light is all about. The perfect aspect of ourselves. Once we realize we're already perfect exactly as we are, we're ready to recognize the second tri-light, which is our wholeness. So Ernest Holmes had something to say about this, and he said, "Spirit is a transcendent perfect whole that contains and embraces all seeming opposites." So what he's saying is being whole means understanding, embracing, and containing what may seem to be opposites. Well, we know that to be true because we know that what exists in our world is hot and cold, big and small. And there are things that seem to be opposites, but really what they are is they're the flip side of the same coin. Darkness and light. So, again, really that's one state of being, and when you enter a room that's dark, it's the same room, but when you turn on the light, you see light, and maybe it seems like it's a different room, but it's the same place, and the only difference is again, you went from dark to light. So, the Bible has a definition of wholeness, and it says, the state of being perfectly well in body, soul, and spirit. Again, if you listen to the connection here, it's, you know, whether you're talking about the Bible, metaphysics, science of mind, it's all the same thing. Again, it's the concept of three, whether it's body, soul, and spirit, mind, body, and spirit, it's perfect, whole, and complete. So when we accept that we're perfect exactly as we are, this affects every aspect of ourselves. Our body, mind, and spirit, our physical, mental, and emotional states. When every part of our being is and feels perfect, that creates a sense of wholeness. That place that erases any sense of separateness, any lack or limitation we may be feeling. How much of that do we need right now in the world? That illuminating light on that darkness, that sense of separation. But that's the outer world. That stuff is created and manufactured, but that doesn't change who we are and what we know about ourselves. And when we know that there is wholeness within ourselves, we can go out in the world and affirm that. And that's the energy and that's the light that we bring out to the world. That there is no state of separateness. No matter what you hear, or no matter what other people say, you know that for yourself. So we are perfectly well in our body, in our soul, and in our spirit. And the beautiful song that you played by Karen Drucker, that it sings in my soul, one of the affirmations is, I am whole. And that's something that's universal, no matter what. So when we're shining that light, we can move into the third light of completeness. Now Louise Hay said, remember, in the vast infinity of life, all is perfect, whole, and complete. The vast infinity. Now that's everything. That's everything on the outside, that's everything on the inside, that's everything that we can see, that's everything that we can't see. It's already understood. It's already a fact, it's already a truth, that everything is perfect, whole, and complete. So, the dictionary definition of complete is having all the necessary or appropriate parts, making something whole or perfect. And if you notice in all the definitions of perfect, whole, and complete, they're all sub-definitions of each other. And perfect and whole is in every definition. And there's no coincidence, because again, everything is perfect, whole, and complete, even the definitions. So when we know and that we are perfect and whole, we have all the parts that we need to be complete. And completeness is the byproduct and only outcome of being perfect and whole. When you're perfect and whole, that's it, you're already complete. We say perfect, whole, and complete, and it's said in that order because when you're perfect and whole, you are complete, and there's no other way to be, that there's no other definition of that. So a common way for others to know when you're finished speaking is many times to say, I am complete. When you're going around the room and you're talking, how do people know you're finished? You say, I'm complete. And that means that there's nothing else. When you're complete, you're already perfect and whole, and nothing more is needed. So, recently, I got to spend some time in my own twilight zone. And it wasn't fun. In fact, it made me want to watch the series, because then I can watch somebody else's Twilight Zone and not have to focus on mine. So I began the journey of moving through the Twilight Zone at the beginning of the year. It's interesting how these things happen when the year changes. But it was the beginning of the end of my relationship. And also it culminated in moving out to Cocoa Beach, which is where I live now. And also dealing with all the changes of that. My cat of 13 years started to have a kidney failure. So you have all these things spiraling out of control at the same time. So, you know, we hear that statement, God never gives us more than we can handle, right? Man, he must have had some high hopes for me, boy, because I was doing the juggling act and trying to keep all those balls in the air. And it really felt like the Twilight Zone, that place of being out of control and trying to keep up with it. And it's like you're on that treadmill and you're going, and you realize you're not going anywhere. And we've all been in that place. We've all had crisis in our lives and changes, and that's just the fact of life. That's just part of our human experience, and it's not a matter of whether we're going to be in the Twilight Zone. The question is, what do we do about it when we're in it? Because we have choice, and we always have choice. And my faith in being perfect, whole, and complete was really put to the test. Because I had many times that I doubted that. So what kind of shifted there? What happened to help me to shift from that twilight zone of being unconscious and not feeling like I'm in my body to understanding. And what did it was being out in the beach. It's very quiet, it's very tranquil, and I had many walks on the beach. And as many of you may know, when you're in a quiet place, you don't hear what's going on outside. It gives you an opportunity to pay attention and listen to your inner voice. And our inner voice is what has our truth. That's what our truth is. When you hear that voice, that's you speaking to you. That's the big you speaking to you. That's the universe, what we're all connected to, speaking to us. And when I was able to do that, I was able to see that this was just the next step in the journey, that this was just part of life. This is just, who knows what's going to happen down the road, but this was where I was supposed to be to learn whatever lessons I was supposed to learn. And that everything was perfect, whole, and complete. Everything was unfolding exactly the way it was supposed to be. And people were doing and acting the way they were supposed to, because it was all part of my journey. And when I can accept that, I was able to exhale and be able to say, you know, I don't need to do anything. It's nothing for me to do. Just to understand that wherever it takes me, that's not going to change who I am or what I'm supposed to do. And that's part of being perfect, whole, and complete, is understanding what we are meant to do, what is ours to do. And when you can know that, that's your perfection, that's your wholeness, and that's your completeness. And that's all inside you. So whatever the noise that goes on, whether it's your own twilight zone, whether it's the noise of things happening in the news, that's noise. But when we can stand in our truth and know exactly who we are and go out in the world, that's what the world needs. And that's what the world is calling us to do. To not stay in our twilight zone, but to know that that is just part of our journey, and that we're not going to allow that to get in the way. Now, I'm not saying that that's easy. Believe me, it's not. It isn't. However, we know something greater, and we know the bigger picture. And however we may be feeling, that we know that there's always a higher calling for us. And to be in that place is really what we were called to do. So we know what it means to be in the twilight zone.
Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of sorrow.
Yes. I love it. Whenever you hear that, you know what that's from, right?
Yes.
It's amazing. But we know what it means to be in the twilight zone. Although each of us has experienced it differently, there is a connection between all of that. And it's that state of being unconscious that all of us have experienced one time or another. We always have a choice of how conscious we want to be in our lives. That's what it means by being at choice. Nobody else can make that decision for us. And Ernest Holmes said, "The truth is indivisible and whole. God is complete and perfect. A perfect cause must produce a perfect effect." So when the cause that we understand is that we're perfect, whole, and complete, having that knowing, that will always produce the perfect effect of whatever we're doing. We already have within us a place that knows how magnificent we are, that's waiting to be tapped into. It's the twilight zone of knowing that we are perfect, whole, and complete exactly as we are. The place that outshines the darkness, which is really not reality, but an illusion of the shadows we're in when we're in the twilight zone. So let's affirm to the universe our unconditional truth. So repeat after me. I am perfect.
I am perfect.
I am whole.
I am whole.
I am complete.
I am complete.
I am perfect, whole, and complete.
I am perfect, whole, and complete.
The time is now for you, me, and all of us to shine and be in our twilight zone. And so it is.
So,